everybody, or good afternoon, everybody. And
good evening,
from
Nigeria, please.
This is Nigeria. We are welcome again to the Diaspora Zoom meeting. Today, our guest is the PDP governorship candidate, Dr. Mbah. The basic thing that we do here, just like we have done a few times, is today we have 3 co-moderators. I'm the moderator, and I believe everybody knows who I am. And we have a co-moderator, Professor Vitus Ozoke, another co-moderator, Dr. Mrs. Amaka Odu, and the third co-moderator, Chief Dr. Mrs. Ifesinachi Ugwonye Okechukwu. Okay. What we are doing in Nigeria, what we are doing in Nigerian American Diaspora Institute is a democracy advocacy.
Click on the link and somebody would admit you. That's what they do.
And
a lot of people are on the line, so they're vetting people.
Amaka, mute.
Mute. Mm-hmm. What we do here is basically advocate for democracy. We deepen democracy for people, Nigerians in America, and for Nigerians in Nigeria. So we encourage our candidates to participate, and we are non-partisan. We are not siding any particular candidate. Rather, we want the people to be able to interact with their candidates so that the candidates, when they win, we can be able to hold them accountable. All right, I'm going to call on Dr. Mrs. Amaka Odu to give us a brief take on what we do in Nigerian American Democracy Institute. Dr. Amaka Odu, go ahead and take it up.
Thank you so much. My greetings to everyone on our forum. We have a meeting in Enugu. I understand now when the neighbor Enugu. But today's Zoom meeting is organized by the Nigerian American Democracy Institute. We call it NADI for short. And what we do is simple. We sensitize our people in Nigeria and here in United States about the political process. We help them create platforms so that they can understand the candidates better. And like Sonny said, hold them accountable when they get into office and understand the rudiments of why they want to hold that office in Enugu or Nigeria. We are non-partisan, we're non-profit, we're non-governmentals. Our members come from the 50 states of United States, and also from the 36 states of Nigeria, including the Federal Capital Territory. Our promise is to be at the forefront of democracy advocates here, both in United States and in Nigeria. We believe that good leadership and advocacy is derived from people coming together and choosing the right person to be at the helm of our affairs. On this note, we are today talking with the incoming, one of the contestants of the governorship aspirants for Enugu State, Mr. Peter Mbah, and we will be able to review with him what he intends to do for Enugu State. You are welcome to this Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Amaka Odu. Let me call on Professor Vitus Ozoke to tell us some of the rules of engagement in this Zoom meeting. Prof, take it up.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is, if you were to rank it, this is the big one. We have to recognize it. And if we didn't do a great job of establishing rules of the road and rules of engagement in the past, this is one place we want to make sure we get it right. The rules are simple, they are basic for anyone who has been part of Zoom meetings ever since it launched during the pandemic. Please stay mute. You can't unmute yourself unless there's a reason for you to unmute yourself, and you have to have the permission of the lead moderator to unmute yourself. And there are times when you don't necessarily have to say anything. You just could go to the chat box and register whatever comment you want to register there. And one of the moderators will be monitoring the chat interactions. And if anything comes through in the chat box that needs to be announced to the general audience, we will do that. Now, if you, for any reason you want to react, and reaction will include clapping or raising up your hand, you go to the reaction button there, select any of the emojis that will be appropriate. So if you want to say something, let's say you want to ask a question, when we open it up to questions, you have to go there and select the raise hand button, the emoji, and you'll be recognized to speak. Otherwise, if you don't do that and you're raising your hand, we might not see you, okay? Now, two things. When our guest speaker, when the candidate, Mr. Mbah, joins us, and I hope he joins us in a few minutes, although Ifesinachi will be speaking to civility in a moment, but there are two basic rules of engagement that are specific to this candidate. We are not here to censor any questions. There will be no no-go areas. Anybody who has any legitimate question will be allowed to ask that question. You are free to ask any question, but here are the conditions. You must do that without being rude. So long as you are not rude in the language and in the phrasing of your question, you are allowed to ask any question. That's one. The second thing is, when you have asked your question, you are done. You cannot be argumentative. You are not going to engage this candidate in a back and forth. So you ask your question, he gives his response, you have to take it for what it is worth. We are not going to allow you to get argumentative with him, okay? I believe these are basic rules, and we can work with it or work with them. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Professor Ozoke. Thank you for that. I'm going to call on Chief Dr. Mrs. Ifesinachi Ugwuonye Okechukwu to give us the rules on civility for today's Zoom meeting.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning if you're in California, and good evening if you're in Nigeria. Well, really, the two eloquent speakers that spoke ahead of me, Dr. Amakodu and Professor Vitus Ozoke, have actually covered these areas. But I would just say, piggyback on what Professor Ozoke said. It's about respect. It's actually respect first for yourself, and then respect to others. Not just not just the candidates that is coming in, but even everybody on this, everybody here in this Zoom meeting. What do we mean by that? You see, there are capabilities to just mute everybody and not allow anybody to speak until it's okay. But this is a way of showing respect and that everybody is mature to be here and to conduct him or herself. So yes, like Professor Ozoke said, you ask your question and wait for it to be answered. There is no comeback or to say, no, this is not what I meant, this is not what I meant. We have the option of writing in the chat box. So if you think your question is not really getting the treatment or the understanding, go ahead and put it there, and we will take turns, making sure that your questions get answered. Treat everybody with dignity. It doesn't matter how bad you feel about another person's question or comment. Just, hold yourself. Let us be calm. Let us be, civil. And we believe that everybody here has that ability to be respectful of self and of everybody else. Other than that, that's what we have for them. We'll come back if need be. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mrs. Ugwuonye. Thank you so much. Tonight we have invited co-hosts. For the sake of time, we will not have time for them to speak at this particular time, but I'm going to mention their names. First is Dr. Moene, Professor Jerry Chukwu, Honorable Chibike Mborie, Chief Bernard Ugu, Chief Dr. Emma Obiesie, Chief Honorable Obi Ibo, Chief Honorable Blessing Chukwu, Honorable Ife Davis, Chief Chris Ago, Reverend Bidi Ago, Professor Amaka Don, Buluchi Victor Apo, Dr. Obiora Eze, Dr. Ejike Eze, and Dr. Mrs. Chi Ofoleta. All these are people that are specially co-hosting this event, and they will have opportunity to make comment. And due to time, our special guest is here, and we're going to let him address us. After addressing us, we will now go to the question and answer. But there is a slight in the role, a slight change in the role this time, because the last meeting we had, the co-moderators did not get a chance to ask their question because they didn't get online on time. So I am going to provide them the opportunity to ask to be the first to ask the questions. So the three co-moderators will ask a brief question. And when you ask your question, let it be question, let it not be comment or speeches. Just go straight to the question. The candidates will take three questions from three people, then we'll address it. Then the next set of three people will do that. All right. Usually what we do, we introduce our candidate, and I'm going to call on Nenna Ude to come and take my seat and introduce the candidate.
Okay, I'll be introducing our candidate. Okay. He hails from Owo and Nkanu East local government area in Enugu States, Nigeria. He studied law in the University of East London in the United Kingdom. He also attended the Nigerian Law School. Okay. And was called to the Nigerian bar as the barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court in Nigeria. He earned the Masters of Law degree in Maritime and Commercial Law at the Lagos State University. He holds the MBA from IESC Business School, Barcelona, Spain, and has a PhD in Political Sciences from Godfrey Okoye University in Enugu. He is also a graduate in Lagos Business School Executive Program and holds a postgraduate diploma in Strategy and Innovation from the said Business School in the University of Oxford. He has participated in several executive certificate programs at Harvard Business School and Stanford University in the United States. An entrepreneur par success and a great philanthropist, he ventured into business at the early age with an eye for possibilities where others see failures. From ground zero, but with focus, creativity, innovation, and pursuit for excellence, he founded many profitable and successful businesses with national and global impacts. His signature investment, Pinnacle Oil and Gas Limited, became a neophyte in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. From a near bottom position, the company has grown to a pole position in competitive market already dominated by many large players. On October 2nd, 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari commissioned Pinnacle Terminal, Lekki, Lagos, a world-class petroleum terminal for efficient exports and imports of petroleum products. The leadership and successes are also evident and impactful in public service and governance of Enugu State. He served creditably as Chief of Staff to Governor Chimaroke Namani and Commissioner for Finance, where he headed many agencies and introduced defining templates for effective governance. With humility and a great sense of purpose, he has offered himself to serve as governor of Enugu State. He has presented a manifesto for building a peaceful and secure, highly developed and purposeful state for all. His comprehensive statement for purpose proposes to move Enugu State from good to great, make it one of the top 3 states in Nigeria in terms of GDP, and achieve a 0% rate in poverty headcount index. His mission and vision entails moving the GDP from 4.4 billion to 30 billion in 8 years by delivering quality, people-focused governance and making Enugu State the preferred destination for investment, business, tourism, and living. He has emerged from the destitute of life, from the proverbial ashes, to soar like an eagle over the Iroko. His true life experiences are the wind beneath his wings to propel him to serve, and together with the Enugu, create wealth and prosperity for all. On behalf of Nigerian American Democracy Institute and its subsidiary, Nigerian American Political Forum, you welcome Dr. Peter Nduvisi Mbah to our Diaspora Zoom meeting.
All right, welcome, Dr. Mbah. And please, you have the floor. You can now address us.
Thank you very much.
Can everybody stay muted while he does his address? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I also want to express my profound gratitude to Nena Ude for those generous remark and introduction. First of all, I want to start by greeting you all. I don't know, you're in different parts of the United States, I imagine. So those of you in the West Coast, in the East Coast, here in Nigeria, we say good evening. It may be afternoon where you are, so good afternoon to everyone. I say I extend my greetings to everyone. I want to thank the Nigerian American Democracy Institute for this great opportunity to rub minds with you. I think that my job essentially this evening is based on the title on your advert, is that I'm here to be interviewed. So I imagine that a lot of the talk will be done by you. So I'm not going to eat into that time. I'm not going to be telling you what you already know. I'm going to make some supposition. One is that I would suppose that you may have acquainted yourself with our development programs, what we proposed to do in Enugu State some few weeks ago when we unveiled our manifesto. There's a link to that. And we also have that downloadable version on our website. But I'm just going to give a highlight of some of these programs and then talk a bit about our plans for Ndi Enugu. And let me also put on record that one of the greatest bequeaths of democracy is the infrastructure of communication, which is what is allowing us to do what we're doing here today, where we can have an exchange of perception on ideas, where we want to reinforce or disabuse our minds on views that we may have held before engaging in communications. So I think this is one of the greatest bequeaths of democracy, this opportunity to be able to rub minds and exchange perceptions on issues. As you may already know, we have elected to serve with a clear mission. So when we took the decision to offer ourselves to serve Ndi Enugu, we were clear to them as to what our mission is. And that mission is simple. We want to provide quality, people-focused governance. And we want to make Enugu State the preferred destination for investment. business, tourism, and living. Now, you'll be wondering why we're on such a mission. And the answer is simple. Enugu State has largely been a public sector driven economy. And we felt that we have to put an end to that. So that is why we're in this. We're, just let it be known that what we've set out to do is to transform the economy of Enugu State from being a public sector driven economy to a private sector driven economy. So you're going to see the re-echoing of a lot about attracting businesses, attracting investments in almost everything we do. We also, in doing that, envisioned an Enugu State that is going to become one of the top 3 states in Nigeria in terms of GDP. We're also mindful that you can grow your GDP and yet not impact on your poverty headcount rates. So we also envision beyond just growing our GDP from the current state of 4.4 billion to 30 billion. We also envisage an Enugu State where we would achieve a 0% rate in our poverty headcount index. Now that means we're going to have to develop programs that would not only see us generating economic activities, making a lot of our citizens economic agents, but we're also going to have programs that would be deliberate, targeted programs that would lift our citizens that are in the pit of poverty out, get them to climb back out of that pit of poverty. Our poverty headcount rate in the state today is not something that is acceptable to us. It's not acceptable to this current government, and certainly not acceptable to us. So our plan is not to reduce poverty. So make no mistake about it. We haven't said we're going to achieve poverty reduction. We're going to adopt a poverty reduction strategy. The time to reduce poverty is gone. That ended in 2015 under the MDG goals. So we want to align ourselves with the SDG goals, which speaks to eradication of poverty by 2030. Ours is to ensure that we even achieve that 2 years earlier with the programs we've developed. So our plan for Enugu is to ensure that we achieve a 0% rate in our poverty headcount index. But we also do have a number of strategic objectives. We have plans for the realization of these laudable vision or dreams. We set them out in 3 strategic objectives. These 3 strategic objectives are not mutually exclusive. Indeed, they are mutually reinforcing and integrated for that matter. So we have, as part of our strategic objective, we have a plan for peace and security in Enugu State. We have a plan for an inclusive economic development. And thirdly, we have a plan for sustained prosperity. We're also going to be doing all this with certain things in focus, because we understand that part of what has happened over the years, it's a massive, there's been this massive mistrust between the governed and those in government. So our target is to eliminate that, to create back trust between the citizens and the government. So part of what we have also done is to outline our core values, to say, look, we do have some governance philosophies that would guide everything we do. So we've outlined 4 core values. In our document, we talked about making sure that we're transparent, making sure that the citizens have access to information, access to what we're doing, and that we also ensure that there is constant report of our activities. So in line with that, we've proposed to have what is referred to, or what we refer to as Citizens Charter. Now, the Citizen Charter is where we state clearly, we've already developed that. It's going to be codified and it will be published. So this is largely a portal. This is going to also be, so the fact that you're not in Nigeria will not be any disadvantage, because you would still be able to participate actively in the Citizens Charter program. It would allow you to view, there's going to be a dashboard where we would report all government activities. So in terms of our public financial management system, you would be able to see how much the government is receiving and what we're deploying those funds to do in the interest of Enugu. And there would be a portal explaining to you every quarter we're going to engage the citizens beyond the weekly and the daily report from my media team. I will personally address Enugu every quarter on our programs. We're going to talk about all the programs we're doing. We're going to talk about how those programs are impacting on the lives of Enugu. Again, part of what we've done, which is unique in our program, is the fact that we have also outlined measurable indicators, so that we're not going to wait till the next 4 years when it is time to renew our mandates to tell you, look, trust us, we're still working on these things. If we're going to grow our economy from where it is at 4.4 billion to 30 billion, it means that we need to be able to show you that growth plan over the years. So in the first 3 months, you should be able to measure our performance. Again, when I talk, okay, so when we talk about having a citizens charter, beyond just the public financial management system, it is also it has embedded in it a social performance contract. Okay, so we need, and part of what we're going to do, which is still under our governance philosophy, is to have the civil society organization as part of our budget. We introduce something called BEAM. BEAM is Budget Evaluation and Monitoring Committee. That committee is going to also have the civil society as members. So it's not just going to be the government workers. We would have the CSOs, the non-governmental institutions as part of our Budget Evaluation and Monitoring Committee. So, and these people would be able to monitor the activities of government effectively and hold government to account. So if we have proposed a budget, we must act in line with that budget. If for any reason we have to deviate from that, we have to go back to the State House of Assembly to do a virement or to call for a review of the budget. But again, the things we do must be something that our citizens understand. In fact, in preparing our budget, there's going to be a robust engagement, not just with the various MDAs, with the ministry, departments and agencies of government, but also with the civil societies. We're going to involve them in our budget preparation, and post-budgeting, they're also going to be part of the team that will be monitoring that budget. Now, going back to what I talked about in our strategic objective, where I speak to the fact that we're interested in peace and security. We all know that without, you cannot have sustainable development without peace. And, conversely, you also cannot have peace without sustainable development. So they're both reinforcing. So we've developed programs that would accelerate our youth employment. We also have programs for our rural development. So most of our rural areas, this is particularly where we currently experience a lot of poverty and unemployment. So we've developed programs to ensure that we get those people skillfully engaged, because we do know that the root causes of fragilities and insecurity in our communities, it's unemployment and poverty. And if we have to address the issue of insecurity, we must deal with unemployment and poverty frontally. And that's why we have robust programs for our rural development, and also an integrated programs for our youth employment. They're all contained, again, because as I did mention, I don't know if that was communicated, I have up until I have till 9:45 to be here. So I'm not going to start getting into the details of what we already have contained in this document. I'm just going to talk high level. So when I talk about rural development and I talk about integrated programs, if you look at this this document, it spells out those programs. For example, in the agri sector, we've moved our agriculture sector to what is now known as agriculture and agro-ally industry sector. So we're not just talking about agriculture, but how do we scale up our production in that sector and then add value to what we're producing so that we can earn a lot of revenue. Currently, agriculture contributes 40% to our GDP. So it's a very important area to us. And what we want to do is to scale up in that sector. And by doing so, we want to add value to our production. So we're not only going to be producing maize, cassava, and other cash crops, cashew, palm oil, palm nuts, and all that. We're going to do what? We're going to create value. We're going to create a lot of industries through those productions. So we have a program referred to as SAPZ. So we're going to create a special agro-ally processing zones across all the senatorial zones in Enugu State. So each zone will have an SAPZ. SAPZ is also what allows you to largely, currently, even with the little we're producing, we still have a lot of wastages from that little. So by having the SAPZ, you have massive storage where we can move our produce to, and then we also have. I'm having some interference. Are we okay? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear
you.
Good.
Okay, great. So for the on the agri sector, part of what we want to do to enhance our productivity there is to deploy technology.
Okay.
No, you need to unmute him.
Unmute him. You see him? No, go back. Go down this way. Go down this way. This way. You see him?
No, he's pinned.
No, that's not him. You see him?
He's gonna unmute.
You see him?
He's gonna unmute.
He made himself.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was still talking about the agri sector. And again, the reason I'm spending time talking about agri is because it does contribute 40% to our GDP, and which means that currently our economic activity in the agri sector is close to $2 billion. Our aim is to grow that to up to $10 billion in the next 3 years. So there would be 5-fold growth in just the agri sector. And the way to do that is to deploy technology. And I was explaining that because we want to, we're in the Western world, we know that technologies are bundles of possibilities. And so if we want to create those possibilities in our various ministries or various sectors, we must deploy technology. And I was just mentioning that part of what we're going to use to enhance our productivity would be technology. And I was citing, there's a program we have that is known as TASTE, T-A-S-T-E. It's technology as a system for transformation, for agricultural transformation. So we're going to, for example, currently where we deploy, we still cultivate our land through manual means. We're going to have a platform. So we're moving from manual pipeline to platform. So all the machineries we need to be able to operate and to enhance our productivity through our smartphone. We're developing apps that you can use to order for all the machineries you need. Just the same way you order for a ride using Uber, the same way you can, using your smartphone, order for the machineries you need in order to indeed enhance your productivity. There are extensive programs we've developed in the agri sector to enhance our even the issue of the frictions we have with the communities. We also have plans to resolve that. One way we've thought out to deal with that is to have a harmonization of our land tenure system. Working with the State House of Assembly, we can harmonize our land tenure system in the communities where government takes ownership of this, basically dormant, what I refer to as dormant assets. Because each time I fly and I'm in the air, what I see, billions of dollars that are laid dormant, that we have to transform those dormant assets into productive assets. And the way to do that is to deploy technology and to create programs that allow us add value in the value chains of production, whether it's those doing processing, those doing packaging, those doing logistics, marketing, and all that. There'll be huge economic activity across the 17 local governments. There is something that a local government must produce. So tell me your local government, I will tell you the product you must be producing. And it's not just producing them raw, but you're going to be adding value. You're going to create a lot of economic activities across all the 17 local governments. That's what we want to do to enhance our productivity in the agri sector, engage our youths constructively so that we can also reduce these young people today, the criminality is largely becoming a venture for them. But if we can create an opportunity for them where they can explore their potentials, where they can constructively be engaged and generate wealth, then that would deal significantly to the incidences of insecurity that we are encountering today in our communities. Now again, we've developed a sector-based productivity growth. So I've only just spoken about agriculture. There's also the energy and the mineral resources sector. This is a completely new sector. There is no ministry in Enugu that is called the Energy and the Mineral Resources Ministry. But that's what we're going to create. We're going to create an Energy and Mineral Resources Ministry because indeed, Enugu State is blessed with a lot of resources, both mineral and natural resources, indeed energy resources too. We know for sure that we have 4 gas fields in Enugu. Actually, 3 are exclusively owned by Enugu State. And we have 1 that is co-owned by Enugu, Anambra, and Kogi. And Anambra already is today an oil-producing state, oil-bearing and producing state. Since March this year, they were recognized by the Revenue Monitoring and Allocation Committee as an oil-producing state. There's no reason why Enugu should also not be an oil producing state, because the OPL 916 that these investors are producing from has a lateral formation. So it has its source also into Enugu. Taproot, it's into Enugu and Kogi, it's spread. And they're doing horizontal drilling there. So there's no reason, so they have 13 wells that are producing today. And there's no reason why Enugu should not be recognized as an oil-bearing and producing state. So our aim is that within 1 year of our administration, we're going to make Enugu state an oil-bearing and producing state. But outside the OPL 916, we also have the OPL 914, OPL 905, and OPL 907. OPL 905 and 907 are around the Oji River area. The OPL 914 is around Ozowani, and they are all exclusively owned by Enugu. We're already going to ensure, because there are a lot of things that we're able to do with gas. We're currently having challenges with how to feed the power plants that we have in Enugu State. And what will that do if we begin to produce gas in Enugu? We're not only going to be able to process it and to create, even from the natural gas, we can process it and have a processing plant where we process LPG. You know, we would have the liquefied petroleum gas from it that we use for cooking, and a whole lot of other ancillary industries will sprout up from just producing gas. And again, under the energy transition, you know that there's a strong argument that gas should be recognized as, exempt from the hydrocarbons. So it should be recognized as, clean energy. So it's not as devastating to the environment as the other hydrocarbon products. So we are going to ensure that we bring in investors that will begin the exploitation and exploration of 914, 905, and 907. We're already working on that, and we would make sure that happens. And then again, under the mineral resources sector, we do have in Enugu alum, we have gypsum, we have kaolin, we have ironstone, we have limestone, we have glass sand. These are resources that have been, identified in Enugu. So what we need to do is to conduct a geospatial mapping. It's a survey that allows us to ascertain the quantum of these assets, and then we could begin to exploit and explore them. So again, what are we talking about here? We want to grow, and we want to create an industrial revolution in Enugu. So these resources must be productive. They shouldn't, Enugu is that state where people or citizens would be in the process of trying to drill a borehole. They would rupture a gas field in their backyard. That's how much resources we're sitting on in Enugu State. So we have to make that conscious effort to ascertain the value of these resources in Enugu. And again, part of why this may not have happened in the successive governments is that you do know that there is this exclusive legislative list. We do have in Nigeria here what is known as exclusive legislative items that are on the exclusive legislative list, which are items that are exclusive for the federal government. And now the concurrent list, and of course the residual list. The concurrent list are those items that both the state and the federal government can both work on. So unfortunately, the gas, the energy and the mineral resources are in the exclusive legislative list. But I'll tell you what, we've got precedents where states with this sort of resources approached the federal government, and there is an understanding. Zamfara is a typical example of it. They are producing gold in Zamfara today, and what they do is largely pay royalties to the federal government. And then for us, even in Enugu, I'm sure we are not called coal states just for the sake of it. We're called coal state because we're sitting on clean coal. And indeed, Enugu's coal Enugu has the best grade of coal in the world, comparable only to what you see in Japan. And today, Japan has technology where they've deployed their coal to power their industries. There's no reason why we shouldn't do that, or at the minimum, export those coals. And even if we're going to treat those coals as assets that we cannot explore because of this argument on energy transition and clean energy and what have you, there's also the argument on stranded assets. If we're going to treat this as a stranded asset and we're going to warehouse those assets, then we have to be paid handsomely for doing so, just as is done in South Africa. There's no reason why, if South Africa is receiving money from the West or from the multilateral institutions, not to explore or exploit their coal assets, and they are being paid for not to sell them for. No reason why Enugu should not be getting money if we're not going to exploit our coal assets. So those are arguments we're going to posit and ensure that we're making money from that. So ultimately, our objective is going to be to generate wealth, to grow the economy of Enugu State, to make sure that our people are constructively engaged. We're going to do that across all the productivity sector, whether it's the agri we've mentioned, the energy and the mineral resources sector. We have the commerce and industry. That's also another area where we have robust. As you all know, my background is business. So I understand what it means to attract businesses. And I also know that businesses are not Father Christmas. So what businesses need in order for them to thrive or to be attracted to a locality is something that I know because I am a businessman. I'm also an investor. So I understand how to de-risk investments, how to ensure that you attract businesses to a locality. I've done that across many states in Nigeria. So if the opportunity to serve my people or to serve Ndi Enugu is realized, then there's no reason why we cannot deploy that know-how to our states and ensure that we de-risk investment flow to Enugu State. And there are several ways to do that because businesses want to de-risk finance, they want to de-risk commerciality, they want to de-risk construction. And that's part of what, if we have to, if we're saying we want to make Enugu the preferred destination for businesses, for investments, then we must ensure that there is ease for, there's ease of doing business, in Enugu State. So that means the ease of obtaining your construction permits, setting up your business, registering your property, and enforcing contracts. So across those indicators, you must ensure that you provide the ease, of doing business. And of course, there are sub-indicators which speaks to everything that we're talking about. So if you look at under our manifesto, the urban and rural infrastructural development, you notice that there's so much emphasis on providing the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Again, in the commerce and industry sector that I'd mentioned a little while ago, we have robust programs for our young people, where we're going to work with a venture capital firm to set up 100 billion naira seed funds that would be a rolling fund to encourage our young ones who have ideas, who have businesses to set up, but they just do not have access to finance. So we interrogate this, validate their business plan and ensure that their business model it's viable. And, we would support them with these seed funds and ensure that they thrive. There's also the Innovation Incubation Center that we're going to build across the 3 senatorial zones. Those Innovation Incubation Center is also targeted towards our young ones, those talented ones that are tech savvy, may have the ideas, they've created that idea, but they've not been able to have, or they don't have access to finance to create a minimum viable product. So what do? We intervene at that point, providing them these incubation centers where they have access to 24/7 electricity, they have access to a high-speed internet, they also have access to water and the tools they need to continue to innovate and continue to be creative. So they are going to have the workstations and all that. So there are a lot of programs we have, for our young people, and again, for businesses. We have the apprenticeship program, and that again speaks to those of our young people who may be interested in trade, but just do not have access to finance. So our job here as a government is to see how we enhance the skills of these young people, and then at the same time, support them with the seed funds that they need. And we could work with private sector. Don't forget what we're doing here is to have a government-enabled but private sector-driven economy. So a lot of these things will be through a public-private sector partnership. And there will be that strong collaboration with the private sector. And then again, I had mentioned earlier that private sector or the businesses or investors, these are not people who you attract by sentiments, or they're not Father Christmas. Our job will be, how do we de-risk their investment, these investments? How do we ensure that we continue to de-risk? So we would engage these guys, sit with them and understand what may constitute a bottleneck for, having a sound financing model. So if you did your financing model and your ROI is not adding up, and we need to intervene to help so that your business plan or your business model becomes bankable. That's where we step in. So again, as I said, it may well be that you need an offtake guarantee. You need something to ensure that these products are commercially viable. A lot of things we're doing. And a lot of these things we're doing, as we're doing them, we're going to encourage the deployment of technology across all the sectors. In our ICT sector, we are proposing to build a Tier 4 hyperscale data center. This investment is going to cost us about $100 million to build. And we're going to work with the private sector to build it. But I tell you what, in less than 3 years, the economic activities we would generate from a Tier 4 hyperscale data center will be more than $10 billion, because it will be the first of its kind in the entire Southeast. So our markets for the data center will be the entire Southeast market. So we're going to be looking at beyond the Enugu state market. A lot of program in the creative industry. So, but as I said, this is your interview. I'm imagining that I'm being interviewed as the, hopefully the prospective CEO of Enugu State. And I won't want to bore you with already, as I said, what you can easily find in my manifesto booklet. But I would like to stop here so that I can give you enough time to ask your questions. There might be areas where you need clarifications, areas where you need to interrogate. By the way, some of the things we've said, and I would like to end on that note, it's been challenged. We have, because doubters, we have naysayers, we have people who just treat it as dismissive because this is not something they are used to. And I'm not surprised by it. I'm not at all worried. Indeed, when you look at the proposal, the economic development plan that was proposed by the then ruler of Dubai, who had in the 80s said, look, this is his development plan and this is how he would transform Dubai. When he left that hall, a lot of people treated him as a jester. Nobody gave him any opportunity. Nobody thought he was serious. They thought he was sick. Okay, so part of what I have done in my life is I have an aversion for convention. If this was something that I was being asked to come and do, or to head an administrative pattern of government, to just, do the same thing the civil servants have been doing over the years, it wouldn't be attractive to me. The reason I'm excited at this prospect of growing Enugu State's economy and making Enugu State that destination for greatness is because we want to disrupt the status quo. We want to be able to challenge things that had existed before and to do things differently. We are already faced with existential threats of immense proportion. We have a dwindling economy from the federal, looking at things from the larger national economic environment. We have a situation in Nigeria today where our receipts is not enough to service our debt. In the first quarter of this year, as a nation, we earned 1.6 trillion and we spent 1.9 trillion to service our debt. So that's not sustainable. We're getting to that point where we would go with our Ghana Must Go bags to Abuja to pick our handout, and we'll be told there is no money in the federation account, so there is nothing to distribute. What are we going to do? Come back and tell our kids there is no food, and we're unable to put food on the table because Abuja has refused or could not give us any money? So this is not the time to adopt convention. This is the time to do things radically different. And you have the man who has shown that he possesses those skills that enable you to disrupt the status quo. I've done that in my private life. I came into a mature industry, an industry where you already have incumbents. The market shares have been distributed, it's taken. And we came in as late entrants. In 2008, we started off in one-bed studio apartment, 3 of us, myself, my secretary, and my dispatch man. But we also knew that we were not just setting up another oil company. We knew we wanted to make a change. So from the onset, we said we wanted to play a dominant role in this mature space. Fast forward 14 years, we are today the #1 in the industry. We're today in the downstream sector, the #1 company. Okay, we've built infrastructures that had not been done in the Nigerian oil and gas space. And this is a mature market. This is, again, as I said, a mature market. It's not a nascent market where you have new players, where you are at the era of famines and people are struggling to gain market share. It is a market that was already taken. So we came in, displaced the incumbents, and took the #1 position. That didn't happen by incremental growth. It didn't happen by growing marginally. It happened because we had clear strategy to grow exponentially. And so we did things. And again, don't forget that the oil industry is largely commodity. So what you're selling is commodity. So there isn't so much to innovate in terms of the product, because the product is largely the same. You just have a spec and that's what you get. In terms of pricing, there isn't much again to do because the pricing is quoted. They are all out there. So if you subscribe to the portal, you'll be seeing the same pricing as they are moving, like everyone else. So you don't have any unique advantage. But what did we do? We look at the business model and we felt that in the operating process, there's so much efficiencies, and there's something we can do that is unique. And we did that. We're in an industry where we had a lot of multiple handlings. So you brought in your product in large vessels, and then you keep them in a high sea. You have to use other smaller vessels to go to the bigger vessels to lighter them because of the draft restriction. You can't go to the port. What did we do? We built an open sea port and ran a subsea pipeline 40 kilometers into the sea, and we're able to discharge products from those large vessels. So what takes the industry 30 days to do takes us just 2 days to do. So we disrupted that space, and today became the #1 with a 23% market share. The second company to us has just 5% market share. So again, that just gives you an insight of one's mindset. Okay, it hasn't been done before. We've not witnessed such exponential growth. I'm asking you to give me that opportunity. And by the grace of God, we're able to replicate what we've done in Pinnacle in our Enugu. And Enugu will then become that destination for greatness. So we would all together forge that great Enugu of our dream. Again, I like to say that this is not the time to play politics. We cannot afford to play politics with our future or the future of our children, right? This is about development. These are about clear development plans that are well thought out. Okay, the future of our state is in our hands. If we fail, posterity will never forgive us. And we all have roles to play, particularly with the level of exposure we have and enlightenment given where we reside. We must take this opportunity, we must take advantage of it and ensure that the right person leads Enugu in the next, the next transition we're going to have next year. So I'm going to urge you to please join me on this journey of greatness, this journey of development, and this journey of growth for Enugu State. And together with your support, because again, we still have the elections ahead of us, and I'm hoping that you would, after this engagement or after this interaction, that I would be able to have your support to be able to ensure that this dream that we've come to share with you about the Enugu of our dream, that we'll all make it a reality together. Thank you very much. So I'm going to cede the floor for questions, and thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? 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 Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Oh my God. All right, let's see what we got. unmute themselves. All right.
Hey, we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Go ahead, speak.
Yeah,
we were muted.
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right.
Can you hear us?
All right, let's move quickly. We have wasted a little time. Sorry about that. We're going to go to my co-moderators. I'm going to, well, ladies first. Let me start with the co-moderators. Please just make a comment and ask your question. Make it brief so that others will emulate us. Okay, I'm going to start with Chief Dr. Mrs. Ifesinachu Gwonye. Make your comment, ask your question, then we move to Dr. Mrs. Amaka Odu, then we move to Professor Ozoke. So make your comment, ask your question.
Thank you, Dr. Ezejefode. I want to first of all thank our special guest, Dr. Barrister Peter Mbah, for his time coming here, and of course the clarity in his submissions. We are very impressed. I will say, if I speak for myself, which I think others will agree, given the comments that I have been seeing coming in, we are very grateful for this time that you are spending with us, and then for the clarity of the subject matter. In saying that, let me ask a little question first. I wasn't going to ask a question, but listening to you so eloquently delivering these topics, I wanted to ask. We have had all these things, and we kind of align with it. We are impressed, actually. Now, how do we, the Enugu State people, I don't like to use the word diaspora, let's say Enugu State people who are outside the Enugu State or who are outside the shores of Nigeria, how can we come in to help make these things more achievable? Because of course, you see that we have the interest or the zeal to see that Enugu actually becomes not just one of the three best states, but the best state in the country, if not in the whole of Africa. So how can we, what do you think we can do to support, to help achieve these beautiful visions that you have? I will stop here for now, and if time permits, I might come back to ask more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Let's move to Dr. Mrs. Amaka Odu. Your comment and your question. Then after that, Professor Ozoke, then Dr. Mbah will respond. Take it up. Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute? Hold on.
Okay.
You got it?
I think you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pastor, and thank you, Mr. Mbah. I have to say that you've been very, very proactive. I am very much impressed with what you have put forth today. I like the mission statement, which is quality, people-focused governance. It is a good one to lean on at this time in the country. I want to thank you for producing the most comprehensive manifesto we've ever had. And I will focus on Enugu State since 1999. As a good job, well done. Thank you, sir. My question is just bordered on two areas. And these are areas that I know that when people read that manifesto, it says everything, but people have immediate needs as at today. People have focused things that will happen and make things change. The first is when you talk about people-focused governance, almost, if my statistics is right, and I'm drawing it from far back in 2017, more than 65% of our youths today are unemployed. I don't know what the percentage is now, but I don't think it's gotten better. I'm going to ask you to permit me to address you as Your Excellency, as I trust that in faith that will come true. Your Excellency, would you commit to providing employment opportunities to our youth? And I'm not talking about what we are used to before. I'm talking about making sure we have a comprehensive database of every graduate and unemployed youth in Enugu State, being able to intentionally move them to jobs where they can be employed, but not just being employed, where they can also be able to sustain their own families. And also making a promise that if after 3 months they get out of youth service and government cannot help find them employment, government will have to pay them a stipend to keep them sustained until they find a job. Here in the United States, we call it workforce solutions. We tried it in from 2014 to 2017 during Sullivan's regime and a little bit of Ugwuanyi's regime, and it worked very well. I think it's all gone now. We did that at the Community Resource Center. That's one question, sir. If we can get that commitment that every unemployed Enugu indigene or resident of Enugu will have a way path with government helping them secure a job or pay them to remain unemployed. The second question is our local government allocations, sir. And when you talk about social performance contract, I was excited. I read it in your manifesto. Social performance contract is telling us that we're going to perform as we promised the people, and we're asking the people to hold us accountable. Excellency, would you commit today that 100% of any allocation to local government will go to local government? When we're not just stopping at allowing them to get that whole allocation as is due to them, we want to make sure that when you do your quarterly updates to indigenes of Enugu State, the local government chairman of each local government will also come out and do a quarterly update to the people in their local government. That way, that accountability is sure. That way, that social performance contract will become realistic. Welcome again in front of the Diaspora people, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Dr. Amaka. Thank you so much. All right, let's move to Professor Ozoke. I think you muted yourself already. Go ahead, Prof.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mbah, thank you for a very well developed plan of action. What you have is not just action, there's a plan, there's a pathway to delivering it. And that is the difference between you and many other manifestos that I have read. They just give you their plan, but they don't give you the pathway to the actualization of that plan. That is what makes yours unique, and I love that. And I mean, people who know me, and this is the first time I'm meeting you, but my friends, a lot of them here who know me, would admit that I have been really very, very skeptical about your candidacy, but I think I'm 99% sold, and that's a huge leap. That's a huge step. So what it means is I can go to bed tonight and be rest assured that if Enugu State is handed to you, we are in good hands. So that's a big leap. But there's something that got me to that point. What got me to that point is your statement that your candidacy is about the disruption of the status quo and doing things and challenging the way things have been done in the past. That's a very bold and audacious commitment, and I like it. But there's one problem with it. The one tiny problem with it is that this status quo has a lifespan of 23 years in the modern era of Enugu State. It's a status quo that started running in 1999 and up until this moment. That is the status quo we are looking at. The problem I see in that is that you have been part of this status quo as the Commissioner for Finance in Enugu State. And under your watch, properties were acquired which have been forfeited to the federal government. And this is not $1 property. These run into billions of Naira. So, sir, would you commit today? Like I said, I'm impressed with your plan of action, but would you commit today that if you became the governor of Enugu State tomorrow, you would do your utmost best to see that those properties are recovered, because those are properties that belong to Enugu State? Would you commit to us today that you would do your best to reclaim those properties from Abuja back to Enugu? That's one question. The second question I ask you is, how much of Enugu State would you continue to surrender to the hands of God? Because that is the governing philosophy of this present government, and it hasn't worked. Are you committed? Will you commit to us today that when you're elected governor and you are sworn in on May 29th of next year, that you are going to negotiate with God and reclaim some of this so that Enugu State can work? Because it hasn't worked. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. That's an interesting question. All right, Dr. Mbah, you can now address the question from my three co-moderators. Thank you. Unmute yourself. Hold on, let's see.
Thank you very much. Thank you, the moderator. I think the first question talks about how do we elicit these, how will the people, and I would also refrain from using the word diaspora, how will the people living outside Enugu State or outside the shores of Nigeria who are interested in the development of Enugu, how will they participate? How will they be able to ensure the actualization of our vision? Several ways. If you notice in our document, we talked about the challenges of FDI and ODAs no longer flowing as they used to. So most of the foreign direct investments that we used to get as a country, and even as a subnational, Enugu, they're no longer flowing. And then, of course, the ODAs, the overseas development assistance, they are slow in coming. So part of what we've proposed is to have a bond, a diaspora bond, where we can, currently we are indeed happy that we get a lot of remittances where you people support the indigent ones at home. But those cash flows are largely channeled to consumption. They used to eat food and all that. Now, there are programs we have which we believe that, considering, and this is something we are in our financing models, we've started thinking out. So there are programs we have that we're going to de-risk the efforts, because I'm sure that one of the things that would worry anybody who has funds overseas and you're trying to get him to invest that fund here, whether on a fixed term investment or a debt investment, either a debt or an equity investment, they would be wondering how are they going to get back this money in dollars, particularly with the sort of devaluation we're witnessing in Naira. So we've got that covered. We have investments that are going to be dollar denominated, and that we're also going to provide securitization for it. So they are going to be tradable. And we are hoping that the people in diaspora, until recently, where you're now beginning to see a spike in your interest rates, I'm sure at some point, a few months ago, your interest rates were even in the negative. You keep your money in the bank, you don't see that much return from it. But we have programs here that can assure you a double-digit yield, even in your FX investment, your dollar-denominated investment. And we are working out that with some financial institutions like the Afro-Exim banks and all that. We've already in discussions with them. In terms of what we have talked about here today, we can be as great, no matter how great our ideas are, one of the things we must not lose sight of is the people that would help drive that. There has to be a diffusion of a collective know-how. So there has to be a spread of know-how. And I think that is what you people in the outside the shores of this country possess, you know. So we cannot do this alone. We may have the vision, the ideas, but we need people to be able to move us from where we currently are to that location. So we're hoping that you would all also offer yourself to play critical roles in this great Enugu that we're all hopeful. So that's the way I expect that you people will participate. And that's, by doing that, we're not only going to, we're not going to stop at taking Enugu to the third position, but also to the #1 position, as you have alluded to. Thank you. And then the next question talk about youth unemployment. The youth unemployment, in fact, currently we have a portal on our website where we're registering. So we have a database of unemployed youths. We've asked all the unemployed youth to register in that portal. So we're gathering data. We want to have, because again, if you want to really have an effective strategy, you must have data. You must have data, you must understand, you know, do your trend analysis and have good data that you can rely on and work with. So we are getting that data. And I think one of the things that pointed out is that we have a situation where we must address insecurity from the root cause, which again, I said, is unemployment. So we have to, part of the long-term, or part of the plans we have in the immediate term in dealing with unemployment is to make sure that we get from those of our kids who are up to age 12, we're going to introduce a technical and vocational program in our curriculum, where as part of their learning, they are also able to acquire a skill outside the formal academic thing they are doing. So that by the time they are up to age 18, they are making a decision as to whether they want to pursue the formal education or they want to develop the technical or the vocational skills they have. Because again, we're talking about attracting businesses. Businesses also want to have skills and labor domicile in the locality where they operate. Because if they have to import those skills and labor, it becomes prohibitive for them. So we want to build first-class technical and vocational centers in our states across all the senatorial zone, where we can, in fact, I already have the curriculum of the vocational and training center and technical center in Ghana. Those guys are doing well. They are one of the the institutions we want to benchmark. I've already started talking to some of the professors in that training center and to understand how, my hope is that I'm going to visit there and see some of them. They've actually invited me to come there and see what they have. So we want to make sure that our young people are also skillfully equipped. So at the age of 18, you're not going to be saying, look, you don't have job but the point you've made about helping our young ones, there's so much noise we're making about de-risking investment flow, stepping in as government to de-risk construction, to de-risk finance, to de-risk commercial. It's because we want employment for our young ones. So sometimes we may take a hit as a government because we want this investment to come. The effect for us is because we actually want to generate employment for our young people, for our graduates. So two things we must do to make sure that the quality of learning these kids get from their education training, it's of high quality. And the second thing is that they are relevant to modern day reality. So we are going to have programs to ensure that these kids get skillfully engaged once they finish their youth service. And for those of them who have not been able to get a job, that's why we have the $100 billion fund to see how we can get them to get into either the micro, small, medium scale enterprise, or we can also engage them, enhance their skills, and provide them seed funds to get into trading or whatever it is. And those again that are talented, we have the innovation. So we have a diverse programs for our young people, which would make sure that they get skillfully engaged. Again, we must provide employment. There is no option. There's no alternative to that. We must provide employment for our young people. There's also a question you asked, which is very important. The local governments, how do we ensure that they get 100% of their allocation? And how do we also ensure that they have these social performance contracts? How do they also execute that on their part? Again, I've always believed that it's always going to be the tone at the top. You know, the tone at the top would drive whatever it is you want to drive. If these people know that first of all, we're going to strengthen our various tiers of government and our various arms of government. You know, the local government system would have to be strengthened. You know, we're not going to be able to develop the state, just like we talk about developing Nigeria, and we've focused so much on a top-bottom approach, and that hasn't worked. Okay, so there is this emphasis on sub-national developing at their pace. We're going to apply the same concepts in our states to make sure that our development is spread. It comes also from the bottom. So we must strengthen the local government. We must make sure that they operate effectively. And if we're saying that a local government must have a productivity center, that they must have one industry that they can cite and say, this is what we're producing. It means that I'm a strong believer that there is no local government in Enugu State that does not have something that they are blessed with in terms of arable land, in terms of resources, mineral, natural. So there must be something we're producing from a rural. We want to strengthen that local government. They should have their budget, just like you have your state budget. They should be able to defend that budget before their legislators and be able to ensure that they are held to account. So this government will not, my government would not interfere with in terms of local governments fund. They must make sure the allocation that is due to them is given to them, and we only must make sure that there is enough mechanism for monitoring and evaluation. That's all we do. And again, the system has provided those checks and balances, and we just need to activate them. So, first of all, I want to start by, expressing my profound gratitude and my heartfelt appreciation for the kind statement you opened your remarks with. I want to say a big thank you. And the truth is that the reason I am in this race is for a transcendent value. It transcends the self. It has nothing to do with my personal self. And perhaps I would have an opportunity to explain that even better. My company currently, our current revenue projection for 2022 is over ₦1 trillion. Enugu's annual budget is not more than 100 billion. That's what our revenue in Enugu, and of course is unacceptable. We shouldn't be talking about Enugu of 100 billion. I mean, we have a land mass of over 7,800 square kilometers. Anambra has a land mass of 4,800 square kilometers. Anambra's GDP is over $10 billion. You know, so Enugu, of all states where, you know, we have this historical growth trajectory, we've played host as the administrative headquarters of the southern and eastern provinces in the 20s, in the twilight of the colonial rule. Enugu was one of the tripods upon which the newly independent Nigeria was built. Enugu was to the south or to the east, what Ibadan was to the west, and Kaduna to the north. We've had that great past. So there's no reason why we should, you know, be playing the, you know, the second fiddle. We should, of course, be that epicenter of development and growth in the South. There shouldn't be any state in the South that is comparable to Enugu. We have all the basics that we need. We have an international airport. We have a number of government presence here, because this is that historic headquarters where the colonial masters identified. They didn't pick Enugu just because of the love of Enugu. There was something special they saw about Enugu, why they picked Enugu as their administrative headquarters. So we cannot fold our arms and not take that first position and that lead position. You know, so part of why we, you know, so 100 billion revenue for an Enugu state is unacceptable, and we're going to ensure that, of course, that, you know, grows. Ibadan generates over 300 billion in revenue, okay? So Kaduna, also the same thing, their revenue, but we're going to surpass those states. Don't forget, our target is to grow ours to 30 billion. You know, Ibadan is about $14 billion GDP. You know, so it's doable, and we're going to achieve that. And again, with your support, we have a precedent in terms of forfeited assets. The precedent is what happened in Bayelsa. So the government of Bayelsa sued the federal government, and the Supreme Court ruled that those assets that were acquired then by Alimesia, that was forfeited by the federal government, must be given back to Bayelsa State. So there's a precedent to that. So all we need to do is just make the application, and those things will be returned to Enugu. There's no doubt about it. It's not even something I think would litigate. They are all Enugu property, and they are as such, they must be brought back to Enugu. You know, our people are God-fearing, and we are all indeed God-fearing, you know, but there are, again, as you said, or as we're wont to say in Enugu State, that Enugu is in the hands of God. I think you perhaps took it literally that, you know, the governor, the current governor, by saying Enugu is in the hands of God, means literally that Enugu is being handed over in the hands of God. And I think we are his agents, because we don't have this big being that reflects God, that we have taken Enugu and handed over into his hands. In essence, Enugu is in our hands. We're just the representative of God. What we make of it is a function of what we, as I said, the future of Enugu and the future of our children. It's in our hands, and I believe that God would use us to be able to achieve that Enugu of our dream. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for addressing all the questions. I'm going to move to those who raised their hands. I have Buluchi Victor. I have Honorable Chibike Mborie, and I have Oloka, Emeka Oloka. So Victor, go ahead, mute yourself.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yes?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Thank you. Dr. Mbah, I had the privilege of meeting you last time you were in New York. You spoke of your manifesto and I was sold in. I mean, I told some of my friends that, look, you got it. You understand the trials and tribulations of Enugu and have a plan way forward. And your presentation here today is excellent. If you were in my panel to hire you as one of my staff, you got my nod, okay? But I just have a few questions for you. Not a question per se, but just to hear your take on it. Enugu State, for us in diaspora, we are not visiting Enugu because of the fear of being kidnapped, insecurity, and all those things. Having been here for over 40 years, 1/3 of my salary goes to supporting non-Enugu, and it's not fair. It's not fair. But in the interim, how would you handle security in Enugu, knowing that police is under the federal government, okay? And knowing that, yes, you're going to, fund youth empowerment and all those, that's our long term. In the next first 6 months of your administration, how would you handle security, okay? Also, knowing that I only have one chance to ask you a question, how would you help us have competition in airline? Because the only airline that goes to Enugu is Ethiopian Airline. What efforts can you make to increase, competition in airline industry? All right. What do I have? Most of my comments are really more of praises because you have not just a plan, but you show us how to get there. But, looking at the current governor and whether it's Ugwuanyi, Chime, and Nnamani, they all have all these PAs, TA, SSAs, and a bunch of them that to me should get a job to help the economy. The government is over bloated. How do you intend to shorten it so that people can be focused in helping the Enugu state and encourage the diaspora to come in and bring their expertise? I thank you so much for appearing before these people, including me. Having seen you in New York, hopefully you are the next governor of Enugu state. Jisike, thank you so much.
Okay. Chibike Mpori, mute yourself. Okay, Chibike.
Okay, yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Let me welcome Dr. Mbah to our forum today. I have just some questions to ask Dr. Mbah, which I believe that it will help to clarify some, things, people have been talking about. Anyway, from when he was talking, I noticed that he has a lot of promises. And when he was talking, what was going on in my mind was, how would the money come to get all those promises fulfilled? Because it is about money. But that's not my question. I'm just saying that's what my mind was just going on. Now, my question is, I just want to ask Dr. Mbah, are you the owner of Pinnacle Oil? Now, if the answer is yes, you know that you joined the government of Dr. Chimaloke Nnamani in 1999 as a commissioner. And in 2002, the Pinnacle Oil and Gas was registered, supposedly by you as a commissioner. So if you are the owner of Pinnacle Oil and Gas, how much were they paying you as a commissioner to be able to own or establish Pinnacle Oil and Gas within 3 years, in government as a commissioner? because we all know what happened when Chimalo Kendamani's government ended, and how EFCC came and took every person out, to their destiny, and how plea bargain was made, and properties were seized belonging to Chimalo Kendamani, which he acquired when he was in office as a governor, and all that. So based on that, all the people arrested with Chimalo Kendamani were released, and that case ended in plea bargain. No one was convicted. That is number one question. Then the number two question I have is this. I briefly went through your manifesto. I just looked at where you talked about energy and mineral resources, which you repeated here also, that in 1 year in office as a governor, you are going to make Enugu State an oil-bearing and producing state. Why I'm saying this is that it is good to make a promise that one is sure of achieving, so that not that people's hope will be built and at the end it will be dashed. How do you think that it will be possible? Because we noticed that the opportunity came for you to show that that will happen, because if you have interest or believe that Enugu State is good for oil business or oil production or whatever, you took capital oil to Lagos. You didn't establish it in Enugu. If you see Enugu as a good place for oil business. Secondly, somebody briefly touched about local government funds. Now, when you were talking about establishing, making sure that there will be production of things in every local government area in Enugu State, we all know that today, no local government area in Enugu State receives an allocation less than 100 million naira every month. And by calculation, based on the federal allocation committee report, by calculation, no local government area in a year receives less than 1.5 billion. And today, no local government area in Nigeria that you will go to at the end of the year and any person will see a project of 10 million naira. Now, if you become governor of Enugu State, how do you plan to make sure that local government areas, they are receiving their correct and total allocations in order to pursue your program based, like you say that every local government will be producing something, either agriculture or something like that. How do you plan to make sure that every local government area will be using that money, well, not the issue of somebody giving excuses about the money came but nothing was done with it. What are you going to do to make sure that every local government chairman will use that money properly in order to pursue whatever program that will help that every local government to get developed? So that is my question for you. And again, how do you plan to balance your development project to reflect on all the all the senatorial zones? Because that's the problem of, we have in Enugu State today. When somebody comes in as a governor, he will focus one particular senatorial zone that he came from, or maybe he has interest in, and start his development project within that senatorial zone, and abandon every other senatorial zone. So how do you plan to make sure that whatever development project you are executing in Enugu State, if you become governor, that every senatorial zone will have equal share of what you are doing? So that's my question for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chibike. Emeka Oloka is the next one, then Dr. Mbah will answer. Go ahead, Emeka.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
By the way, Engineer Emeka Oloka is the coordinator of Nigerian American Democracy Institute in Nigeria, and is doing a good job for us. Go ahead with your question, Emeka.
Thank you very
Can we
much,
see your
Prof.
face, please?
Can we see your face?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. So it's a nice opportunity to have our potential CEO of Enugu State in our midst, in the person of Dr. Peter Mbah. Yes. Sincerely, of all the candidates we've been able to engage with so far, he comes across as the most detailed person in terms of the manifesto. So, and he has a clear-cut plan of action to achieving it. So I want to thank him very well for taking out his time. But then something bogs my mind. He said he is averse to convention, but then you cannot take away that convention from the party on which he is standing to run for the position of governor of Enugu State. And in football, we said that a team is as good as its last match. From the feelers we have in Enugu State, every Tom, Dick, and Harry knows that Governor Ugwuanyi, in terms of his developmental index, is a far cry from what Chime has. So looking at, for instance, as a youth, the ordinary youth on the streets of Enugu, how do you convince the youths of Enugu to key into this manifesto coming from this same PDP? How do you make them have? Because assuming you are a candidate of a different party now, oh, it would have been very easy. But now we are looking at Enugu, we are looking at PDP, Enugu State under the hands of PDP. So how do you convince the youth? Let me just use the youth as a, for example, how do you convince the youth that yes, they should key into this manifesto? Not just that, as part of the question, I just looked at your Twitter handle now. You have less than 5,000 followers. And you have very, very rich manifesto. So it appears that you have, how do I put it? You don't have where to meet the audience, or you have a very rich manifesto that you have in terms of lifting the youth out of the poverty line and then creating jobs for them, where you mentioned the venture capital firm, as well as the innovation incubation centers in the three senatorial zones of Enugu State. These are laudable projects. But then, how do you communicate these things to the youths, for instance? I'm trying to be very, very practical here. How do you communicate? How do you sell your manifesto to Enugu youths, especially on the platform of PDP? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emeka. Dr. Mbah, you have questions from 3 people. Go ahead and address them. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, so I think the first question came from Victor, who talked about the issue of security in Enugu. And there are 2 things he talked, actually 3 things. One is the state of insecurity in Enugu. The second is how do we make our airline competitive? And then the third is how do we ensure that we run a lean government, right? So you notice that from our 3 strategic objectives, the first item there in our strategic objectives, immediately after we talked about our vision and our core values, we started talking about peace and security, because we understand the importance of peace and security. And we know that there is just no way we can have a sustainable development without peace and security. And what we have also noticed is that a lot of our young people have taken to criminality as a venture. And that's where this kidnap come in, because it's profitable. they see it as a venture where they can make quick money. And we know that the root causes of those criminalities. So I spoke a lot already about the soft side of things. So you have the soft side of things and the hardware. So if you want the software and the hardware, the software is dealing with those soft issues like unemployment, making sure you get them skillfully engaged. But there is a hardware, which is how do we deal with the issues, the incidences of insecurity in our community beyond just unemployment, because there are still, even when you have people construct, there will still be some bad eggs. So we do have plans to deploy technology in that area. We're going to strengthen our community policing. So the argument that the issue of security is under the exclusive legislative list is not attainable. The oath of office that I take, my primary objective in that oath would be to secure the people of Enugu. So security is my primary job. It's not, I am the chief security officer of Enugu State. When by the grace of God, I take the mantle of leadership. So it's not something I can delegate. And we do have a window as governors to be able to provide security in our communities. That is our primary job. If we've not dealt with that, we've not done anything, okay? So we must make sure we deploy the technology that we need in terms of making sure we have drones, we have CCTVs, we're able to nip some of this. We also have this agitation and, our young people who are agitating, we have a separatist group. So there would also be communication strategy, how we engage those people to try and communicate and ensure that they understand what we're doing as a government. And if you notice in recent time, we've almost ceded the instrument of violence and force to non-state actors. And that is dangerous for us as a people. So when you have non-state actors declare that we should sit at home, we all sit at home. That's not acceptable, frankly. So we need to address those things, because we can't talk about growing our economy, bringing in businesses, attracting investments. If businesses are not Father Christmas, as I keep saying, because they want to come and make money. So if they only have 3 days to work in a week, they are not productive, they are not optimal, so they will not come. So we have to address those things, and we would deploy technology to fight insecurity. We would strengthen our community policing. In terms of, I can tell you that we've already started working on making sure that the international wing of our airport is operationalized. I have already there were 4 airports that were slated for concessioning in the country. Enugu was not part of it. The Enugu International Airport was not part of it simply because it's not complete. They've not completed the building. It's about 90% complete, but there are still other things to do. We now got the Ministry of Aviation through our honorable member. As you know, we're fortunate to have an honorable member who is the House Committee Chairman on Aviation, Honorable Nnoli Nnaji. So we're working together already with him to ensure that Enugu becomes part of those airports, the international airports in Enugu becomes one of those airports that would be concessioned to consortium of investors. What that means is that we can easily get private sector come in, take over that airport, complete it. And the truth is that they've agreed to our proposal to do what is called or referred to an unsolicited bid. Because we're now the ones approaching the federal government saying, okay, we know that this international airport is not done yet, but we're more than happy to take it as it is and fix it and get it working. So we're dealing with that now. And our hope is that once we operationalize the international airport, that would be able to attract other foreign airlines who would come to our state. Again, one of the things that we re-echoed in our core values is that we're going to run a lean and agile government. And we're going to do that through technology. So we're going to have an e-governance structure. Earlier today, I was addressing some set of young people. These are leaders of student union government across all the tertiary institutions in Enugu. And what I told them was that, look, we're not training you to come out and start queuing, waiting to get an EA or an SA of government, or waiting for a government job. That's not what the Enugu of our dream is. That we want to create economic activities and make sure that the skills that you learn during your educational sojourn would prepare you to be able to get engaged once you leave school, not waiting to get an appointment as a TA of government and all that. So that's not what we're going to encourage. We're going to use e-governance platform to make sure that our government is lean. We're going to take the services of government to the citizens. So we're going to have e-governance to employees, e-governance to citizens, e-governance to business, and e-governance to government. So those are the 4 layers of e-governance, and they are integrated, and we want to deploy that. And that's how we're going to run a lean and agile government. I want to say here, I'm moving on to the next question, that I want to state clearly that I like so much the questions that Chibike asked, because I would have been surprised if we finished these sections and this question didn't come up, because I think that in the run-up to the primaries, there were a lot of misinformation that, were peddled. There were a lot of, people, vilified others. There were politics of cow money. They maligned, one was maligned, scorned, and all that. Even though I knew when I took the decision that I was going to, be exposed to all sorts, I underrated the extent to which people would entertain themselves and stretch their imaginations in concocting falsehood. So that is why, for every opportunity I have to provide clarifications on these issues, I welcome it greatly. And so that's why I want to commend these questions that were asked by Chibike Mbori. You already have a manifesto where how we will find money to do these things are stated. We also said that in our manifesto, that one of the things that troubled us when we were stating all these things was how we would find money to address them. And they are contained there. We have several financing models, but most importantly, to understand that this is not going to come from government money. This is going to come from private sector money. There's going to be collaboration from different institutions, multilateral institutions, DFIs, development financial institutions, and all that. There are several financing models we've outlined. Those were not necessarily your question. You went on to talk about Pinnacle and the ownership of Pinnacle. So let me tell you a bit about myself. I set up my first company in 1992. I actually built my first house in Lagos in 1992. I had set up a number of successful businesses, and these are things that are verifiable. So for example, Peter Mbah Investment Company Limited, which I started in 1992. If you do a check or you run a check on CAC, you would see the owner of that company when it was formed, and you will notice that it was in 1992. In 1993, By this time in 1992, what I was largely doing again was trading. I did a lot of trading. I imported goods from Germany. I imported goods from the United Kingdom. I was bringing in electronics. I was bringing in spare parts. At some point, I was doing over 18 containers every month. In 1993, I had an uncle who, of his blessed memory now, he used to live in the United States. He was the vice president of International Oil Corporation, Dr. Lazarus Aboro. He represented International Oil Corporation. He was based in Oakland, right? At the time, I was already trading, and the IOC was looking for a representative in Nigeria. And Dr. Lazarus Aboro, of his blessed memory, had to ask around. He wanted an Enugu person. In fact, he was very happy when he found out that I wasn't just an Enugu person, but I was also an Owu person who had the capacity at the time to represent International Oil Corporation. At the time, International Oil Corporation was lifting crude oil from Nigeria. And I became the representative of IOC in Nigeria. For all the crude oil that IOC lifted from Nigeria, I was making 25 cents per barrel for each crude oil because I was representing. I would go to, at the time you had PPMC was at Eric Moore and NNPC was at Kufa Bayomi. So I was the one representing them. I was the one clearing all their vessels, making sure that they go to the terminals where they load. So I was already doing a lot of business. I had, from setting up Pinnacle Oil and Gas, I set up GPL Shipping. GPL Shipping also was into oil and gas and did a lot of shipping and clearing because we helped. I worked with a company called Gulf Shipping Agency then that had a relationship with Shell in a lot of the platform. We were loading from Focados, we were loading the Brent crude from Focados at the time. But let me not bore you with all that. I grew, in fact, at those early age too, those early stages of my life, I'd set up an international school in Lagos. I had Focus International School that provided primary, secondary education in Lagos, okay? I took the decision when it was becoming clear to me that if I continued to stay in Nigeria with the level of businesses I was doing, I probably would not be able to go back to school to, complete my university education. So when I left for the United Kingdom to pursue my LLB, my businesses were funding me, okay? I did not join government in 1919 as you claim. I joined government in 2003. And how did I join government? When I had finished doing my LLB, and I think this is very important because we need to provide some clarity about my background and how I came to fame and my source and origin of funds. It's important that I give this background. So when I was done with my LLB, I was in a hurry to come back because I had businesses here and I wanted to come and continue from where I stopped. So even I graduated with a very good grade. I had the opportunity to pursue an LLM. I had an offer by what is known in the UK when you do your LLB, the law profession in UK is diffused. You can decide to pursue a career as a solicitor or as a barrister. I went on the path of barrister. So I had a BVC award, the Bar Vocational Award of the Lincoln's Inn. I was a student member of the Honorable Society of the Lincoln's Inn. So if I had stayed back in the United Kingdom, I would have gone on to do my bar vocational course and then gone on to practice law in the United Kingdom. But no, because I had businesses, I did not go ahead with that award. I went on to, once I finished my LLB, I came back to Nigeria to do my law school, did my law school and was called to the Nigerian bar. But where the man that sponsored me in law school, because for you to go to law school, you must have a very standing person in the high standing person in the profession to sign that you are a fit and proper person to be called to the bar. Justice Nnemeka Ago, of his blessed memory, was my sponsor in the law school. He signed my sponsorship form. I was posted to go and do my law school in Abuja. Because I had businesses in Lagos, I ran to Justice Nnemeka Ago. I said to Justice Nnemeka Ago, look at my posting, because as a foreign graduate, you have to do two things. You have to do your bar part 1, which I did in Lagos. When I did my bar part 1, the only faculty, the only campus of the law school that was validated to do the bar part 1 was the Lagos campus. So I did my bar part 1 in Lagos. But in terms of the bar finals, they had the Enugu campus, the Abuja campus, the Kano campus, and I think the Rivers campus. They had about 4 operational campuses then. So when I was filling my bar final forms, I picked Lagos as my first choice, Lagos as my second choice, and Lagos as my third choice. When my posting came, I was posted to Abuja. I ran to Justice Nnemeka Ago and pleaded with him that, Your Lordship, there was no way I could go to Abuja. I had businesses in Lagos. I wanted to be able to do my bar finals in Lagos and still do my business. So Justice Nnemeka Ago had already started at the time writing a note to Professor Jegede. Professor Jegede at the time was the DG of the Nigerian Law School. On a second thought, he called me back. He said, Peter, do you realize that there's the law school in Enugu? I said, yes, Your Lordship. He said, wouldn't it be a great opportunity for you to go and do your law school in Enugu? I didn't have to think twice about it because I've always wanted an opportunity to get familiar with I was a baby when my father took us to Port Harcourt. So I never had that great opportunity that I'd always wanted to live in Enugu. So when he mentioned that, I jumped onto it. I said, please, Your Lordship, I'd rather go to Enugu then. So Enugu, here we come. So he then changed the notes, gave me a note to Professor Jegede. I went to Abuja. Jegede canceled my posting to Abuja and posted me to Enugu. While I was on campus in the Enugu Law School, the Nigerian Law School in Enugu, I had my people who came to talk to me about politics. Meanwhile, I've had my political baptism as a student in London. I was the first Black guy in the Faculty of Law where I went to school to be the president of the Student Law Society. So they started talking to me about, look, this is your turn to come and, it is our turn to become the local government chairman. And why am I not coming out to help and serve? I said, I'm here just to do my law school. So I really don't want to be distracted and all that. So these guys kept coming back to talk to me. To cut the long story short, I decided that, I would, give it a shot. So I started setting up structure. At the time I joined, the PDP had given out its tickets to a Frank Anyoma then as their candidate for the local government, in Kano East local government election. So there were, other parties had not done their primaries. So I started working on the APGA. So, and then I created a lot of buzz, a lot of noise in the Kano East local government. The governor then, Chimaroke Nnamani, who was the then governor, heard about this so much noise I was making and the interest I was generating. He became anxious to see me. Now, to cut the long story short, I met with Chimaroke for the first time in my life. We were by his poolside. I spoke to him for not up to 2 hours. There and then, he offered me the job of a chief of staff. He asked if I can if I can do the job of a chief of staff. I told him I don't even know what the chief of staff does. At the time, Frank Nweke was his chief of staff. He said he's going to talk to Frank. I should go and meet with Frank, and he will tell Frank what to do. Now, why did I need to give you this background? It became necessary so that you understand how I got into government. I joined that government in 2003 as the chief of staff. As the first job I did was the chief of staff. And then there's something else you said. You talked about Pinnacle being founded in 2002. Pinnacle was registered in 2004. In 2004, when I was asked to go and serve as a commissioner for finance, I was a bit reluctant to do public service anymore. Don't forget, I was always a private sector person. I just came and had that stint. So I wanted to go back to do my what I knew best, which was the private sector. And then I said I needed, when the offer to go to the Ministry of Finance was made to me, I said I needed to think about it. Over the period that I left government, in that 2004, I set up Pinnacle, okay? And then of course, I continued to receive calls from the governor then, who said, look, you know, I brought you into government because I saw you, we hardly spent 2 hours, so to cut the long story short, he wanted me back, he wanted me to come and serve in his government. I then came back to government. So Pinnacle, even though we registered it in 2004, did not become operational until 2008, after I had left government, right? Pinnacle became operational in 2008. And as I said, Pinnacle today is a unicorn. That unicorn did not start overnight. We grew step by, Pinnacle is a very well-structured company. We have filed our financial statements every year. We're currently being audited by KPMG. KPMG is #1 audit firm in the world. And KPMG will not audit you if they've not run an advanced due diligence on you. Pinnacle is at a point where, as I said, is a family business. If you look at the ownership of Pinnacle, it is owned by myself and my wife. And we're just at a point where we want to list Pinnacle so that we can democratize the ownership. Pinnacle has a structured board, a well-effective board. We have 4 non-executive directors and independent directors for that. And then we have 3 executive directors. My COO is an American. I have 12 expatriate staff, in Pinnacle. Both the UK guys, the Americans, the Dutch guys, they all work in Pinnacle. It's a well-structured and managed company. It is not, there's this thing that I thought they used in politics, which was in the run-up to the primaries, where they said, Chimaroke Nnamani owns Pinnacle, and I'm coming out as an appendage or a stooge. You cannot run a unicorn. A unicorn is a company that has over $1 billion revenue. You cannot be a CEO of a unicorn company and then somebody decides to make you an appendage and you walk away from that company. I mean, my COO, who is an American, earns over $500,000 annually. He flies first class. My staff, these things are all verifiable. So what would make me leave such a comfort zone to do what I'm coming to do if it is not exclusively driven by service? I don't have to. If it was for the extrinsic value, I wouldn't be interested because I make a lot more money as a CEO of Pinnacle. So the ownership of Pinnacle, as I said, you've just listened to the president who came on the 22nd to launch our facility. That facility today saves the country over $500 million annually on demurrage. That's how we've been able to, to disrupt the sub-optimization in that space. Okay, so we've created an optimal value to a space where we play. And we've also captured that value, which is reflective in our market share. So we've not just created value, but we've also built the talent, built the workforce, because it's one thing creating value. It's also another thing capturing that value. In order for you to capture the value you've created, you must have the right capabilities. You must assemble the right heads, the right hands to be able to capture that. So we're not just good at innovating, but we're also good at organizing ourselves, making sure we capture the value we've created. So the question from Chibike also speaks to a plea bargain. How much were, talk about the arrest and a plea bargain. When at the twilight of that government that I was the Commissioner for Finance, where we were challenged, we had the EFCC that descended on the states to ask about the financials of the government. Frankly, I may not have said this before in public, but let me state this very clearly. When the EFCC investigation started, I was not part of those that were invited to the EFCC, even as a Commissioner for Finance. We had an invitation by some of my other colleagues who were in the same government, who EFCC specifically requested them to come. As the Commissioner for Finance at the time, I was advised to go with them. And I went with them. When I got to the EFCC, they showed me a letter, a petition that I read. My name was not mentioned. The gentleman that was an officer of EFCC said to me, well, since you're here, we might as well just ask you some few questions. So they took me in, gave me their statement form, and asked me very casual questions. I made my statements, and off they asked me to go. My colleagues that went with me, they detained. They kept them. So, and again, this is my life. This is my true life story. Now, when eventually, I have some principles that I'm guided by. First of all, I believe that if I've worked under a government and we made decisions as a government, and I didn't walk out of the Executive Council sending in my resignation, that the notion or the concept of collective responsibility demands that I defend that government with everything that I have. And that's a principle that I have. That's a principle that I'm guided by. Call it maybe something that is driven by my exposure, my understanding of life. So that was what was maintained. So when my colleagues got back, after they had spent some weeks in detention, and they got back, I was re-invited to EFCC for questioning. And at the end of the day, again, as I said, I have a responsibility, and there's a collective responsibility. If you have a program that you have, as part of a member of an executive council, a decision was made to execute those programs, and those programs were executed. I felt duty-bound to defend the policies and the programs of the government, which is what I did. The EFCC guys didn't like it, so they held me back, and I stayed and spent several months at the EFCC facility. I was never, so by the only time, of course, when they were preparing their charge sheet, they just put my name there. They put my name, if you want, as a placeholder. I wasn't the target of the investigation. Okay, so the minute the governor, who was then perhaps their target at the time, he stepped down from being a governor. The next thing that we had was my name and two other persons that were in that charge sheet. Our names were struck out from the charge sheet. I was never a party to any plea bargain. I'd never been convicted before by any court. I've never faced any criminal charge. In fact, there was no trial. The trial never commenced before my name was struck out from the charge sheet. So I like to use this opportunity to reinforce that never, these were things that existed in the imagination of some people, and I felt that they did politics with it. But the time of politics is over. We should face realities. Indeed, if there is a shred of evidence, I challenge anyone, just a modicum of evidence to show that I was part of a plea bargain or that I was convicted by any court of law for any charge whatsoever, and it is just as I have stated to you. We didn't even have to do much. All we did was apply before the trial started to struck out, and our names were struck out from the charge sheet. So there was no such thing as a plea bargain. It never happened. It only existed in the imagination of some people who felt that their popularity was waning in the run-up to the primary. And all they could do to gain popularity was to begin to malign people, to concoct falsehood. And that was what happened. And as I said, this is all I had expected that would have been gone. Because again, how could you be a candidate running for election and you have your co-contestant who has a criminal record, and yet you have not gone to court, you have not at least provided an evidence to challenge that in court? Indeed, I'm a lawyer, registered in the rolls. So I can't even possibly be a lawyer of the standing that I am today if I have any, criminal record standing over my head. You asked a question about the energy and mineral resources that I spoke to, and you said, I'm going to make Enugu State an oil-bearing state in 1 year. Yes, as I said, Enugu State ought to have been, as we talk, an oil-bearing state. Now, we are in court as we speak. Enugu State is in court, and that matter is already at the Supreme Court, where it's being argued that the field, the OPL 916 that is currently producing, Enugu ought to be benefiting from that production because it has a lateral formation, it has a horizontal formation. So it has a taproot both from Enugu and Kogi. So within the next couple of months, that matter would be settled, and I can assure you it will be in favor of Enugu State, and we would become an oil-producing state. Now, again, you talked about why is it that I went to set up Pinnacle Oil and Gas in Enugu, in Lagos. Why didn't I set it? Again, now some of these things, which is why I like these questions, because some of them are predicated on profound ignorance. And by the time you explain this clarification, the party asking the question, you may have helped him. Now, Pinnacle built his oil terminal in an offshore area where we have 40 kilometers of pipeline in the seabed. What created the unique value proposition we have in the industry is the fact that we built an open sea. In the Atlantic Ocean, we have a midstream port that can take large vessels. So we have a port at a water depth of 23 meters. Okay, so Enugu doesn't have we don't, we're not bordering any Atlantic Ocean, you know, so there's no way we could have done what we did in Lagos, in Enugu. However, I'll tell you something you may not know. We have already started through our honorable member, who is the House Committee Chairman on Inland Waterways, Honorable Patrick Asado. We procured funding from NIWA to dredge our coastal water line in Enugu, in Ozowani. So indeed, a lot of people do not know that Enugu has actually a coastal part to it. And that's already what we're doing. What have we done? We've done the bathymetry study of that water channel to see if it's navigable. And yet, yes, the result we have shows that it's navigable. So we're going to use barge. We're going to develop a strategic buffer reserve at Ozowani, where we can store petroleum products, so that in the case of scarcity, when we have a demand surge, and there is usually during the festivities, we do have demand surge in the Southeast, and you have scarcity, people pay premium to get petroleum products. So with what we're planning to do in Ozowani, we're going to solve that problem, because we're going to build a strategic buffer reserve there. And that would happen because we would dredge that channel, that river channel, and make sure that we bring in barges to discharge products from there rather than using the road transport. Okay, so that is it on that. And I think that's all. I think the last question is, how will you make sure LGA receive all allocation and use them? Again, that's a repetition of the questions that I have already addressed. Okay, the monies that are accruable to the local government will get to the local government, and we will ensure that the same way we submit our social performance contracts, that we show to Enugu every quarter the money we've received, what we're using that money to do. We will compel the local government chairmen to do the same. They should be able to publish reports on how much money they've received, what they've channeled that money to. And as I said also, they should have a budget that, you know, the people that this budget would impact can review and make sure that they set up, just like in the States, where we're going to work with the civil society organization to have a budget evaluation and monitoring committee, that at the local government level, they also set up budget evaluation and monitoring committee with the civil society organization as members, so that beyond the mechanism we have in government to provide checks, that the civil society also becomes a watchdog to, you know, evaluate how much these guys are getting and what they are using the money for, and to be sure that it's in line with their budgets. Now, finally, question from a maker. You talked about, you know, you talked about taking away. One thing you have to give to our party, PDP, is the fact, the internal mechanism it has to reinvent itself admirably, to, you know, look, what could have, in your opinion, thrown up a candidate like me? If it is not, I can tell you that my emergence as the PDP candidate was largely driven by patriotism. It has nothing to do with if the criteria was kingship or friendship or closeness. I would not have fitted those indices. Those indices, I didn't come close, because there were a lot of people in the contest that, you know, would have satisfied those indices far more than myself. Okay, so I believe that it is the ability of the leadership of the party, understanding the demands of the time we're in, and looking at someone who possesses both the skills and the commitment to be able to harness the resources of Enugu State to the benefit of Ndi Enugu. So what we tell the young people and why we believe, and by the way, you talked about my social media handlings. We do have a lot of programs that are youth bias. Just recently, I presented a keynote address to over 24,000 young people that are gathered in a hall. They had a tech summit where I had to talk about innovation and leadership. And I was addressing them also beyond just innovation and leadership, but also governance and how they can participate. I have had the opportunities to deliver lectures in several, tertiary institutions, and we're going to continue to engage the young people, engage, our young ones to make them understand our program. So, and I think specifically you want to know how these young people can key into our manifesto. So yes, this is one way to do that. And by engaging, we continue from Tuesday next week. I'm going to have town hall meetings across the 68 development centers. So this is not your old style kind of campaign where we have massive campaign rallies. We come together, demonstrate, show force, make noise. We're going to have town hall meetings across the 68 development centers. And it is going to be engaging with the young people, with the professional bodies, with the community-based organizations, with the civil society organization, the non-governmental institutions. So we're going to be engaging. So we're going to be interacting with these people, hearing from them, trying to get them to interrogate our manifesto, learning from them what we may not have captured in our manifesto, but they are in pressing need. Our job is to provide solutions to compelling social problems, to compelling economic problems, and to compelling business problems. That's why we're in this for, providing solutions. So, and if we have this, nobody ever said to us that this is going to be an easy job. We've undertaken to do it. We've undertaken to serve with humility. We've undertaken to serve with moderation, with forthrightness and simplicity. And with your help, we should be able to accomplish that. And again, I have to say that I really exceeded the time that I allotted for this. I was supposed to get into my other engagement in the last 45 minutes. I was supposed to start another program at 10. So I had planned to end this at 9:45. But this is already 10:27. But I thought that those questions from Chibike was very important to tell the story that I told, because it's been like, if these things are not explained, if we don't have this clarification, people will still become confused. How did you leave government and suddenly you become big? Pinnacle was started. If you go and look at the original registration document, when Pinnacle was registered, the capital base was 1 million. Today we may have hundreds of billion as our capital base, but we started with 1 million. That's the capital base of Pinnacle. We started in a one-studio apartment. What has made us grow is because of the ideas we have that we're able to translate into values, and we've been able to capture that value, and today we are playing a leadership role in an industry. Think about it, we're late entrants. So even if you had all the money on earth, there's no way you can displace the incumbents if you did not do things differently. With all the money on earth, you can't displace Mobil, you can't displace Total, you can't displace Corn Oil, Adova, the big major oil companies. You can't become a 23% market shareholder if you've not done things differently. So it has nothing to do If you like, go and steal all the money and start your own. If you don't create value, there's no way you can do what we've done. Okay. And, you know, go and look, ask questions about the people I have trained in the industry. My general manager operations is today the owner of the company you hear, Adova, AP. I trained these people. AYM Shafa, who is one of the major players in this dance. These were people that went through my tutelage. You know, so I have also not just been a player, but I've also been a builder of men in the same ecosystem, in the same industry. You know, so please, let's stop peddling this falsehood. Let's stop stretching our imagination on what does not exist and what is at best a complete concoction and tissues of lies. Pinnacle is owned exclusively as a family business by myself and my wife. And we're only just recently thinking about listing Pinnacle as a public business because we've grown to that size where we just believe we need to democratize ownership of Pinnacle.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mbah. Thank you so much. We're going to have another round of, do you have about 5-10 minutes?
5 minutes,
no.
Yes.
So they already told you.
All right, so what we do, look at what we do here.
We'll do it part 2.
You are in a rush. I'm going to make my comment. I'm going to have Dr. Mo. I'm going to have Dr. Mo do some vote of thanks. My comments are usually just like in the other Zoom meetings. I'm going to start by.
So, Sonny, can I say something?
Can you hear me?
Sonny, can I say something, please?
Who is that?
Can I say something for a minute, please?
Who is that? No, no.
We'll put any to go. Let's round up.
Okay, all right. Let me finish my comment. Then Dr. Mo will do the closing remark.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. All right. Amale is the great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten from Mbah to Mbah. He was called the cat because his back.
You mute everybody. Mute everybody.
Mute everybody. The noise is too much. Okay. Is that good now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but please mute everyone.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Unmute that. Why is it not showing me that? It's not showing me to mute everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, continue.
Yes. Let me continue.
Just continue.
Yeah, let me continue.
Just continue.
Yeah. All right. Amale was a great wrestler who was for 7 years unbeaten from Mbah to Mbah. He was called a cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight, which the old men agreed to be one of the fiercest fights since the founder of their town. They engaged the spirit of the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. Dr. Mbah, this short passage is from Things Fall Apart.
Things Fall Apart.
Yes. The question to you is, I want you to set your party PDP on the side. And all the other candidates set their parties on the side. And we are looking at individual candidates. Who do you want to be? Okonkwo or Amalinze? Dr. Mbah, are you still there?
I think he left.
Oh, he's here. He's muted.
Okay, he's here. He's unmute himself.
Okay, unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Prof. Prof.
Yes.
As you know very well, I think that one of the things, and I think you're the best person who probably understands this better than everyone else, including myself. Our democracy is not yet grown to that point like what you have in the United States, where you also you have people who can, on the basis or the strength of what they've done, they can come and stand for election as an independent candidate. We do not have provisions for that in our constitution or in our laws. So you must, as a candidate, be sponsored by a political party, okay? So, and those political parties, it is not hypothetical, they are real, okay? And you, just like we talked about, how do you displace the incumbents and become a leader in a space? It requires strategies. You know, you have to think outside the box. So if you have incumbent parties in our country and you want to win election, your first option is to identify one of those incumbent party and try and do your internal politics and make sure you get into, you know, winning the hearts of the leadership of that party. Now, if you fail to achieve that, you have to then think sophisticatedly, okay, what's the reality here? Okay, and you know, some of these things, as much as we feel so sentimental about it, we have to recognize the reality of our society, that we're in a heterogeneous society. And then if you are in politics, you must be able to play politics, to understand the, you know, how to do it. And again, if you notice, for us as Ndibo, I'm not sure we've quite shown sophistication like we've done on our other spheres of life in politics. Okay, it appears that the other tribes we have in Nigeria seem to be ahead of us when it comes to playing politics. But we need to understand how these things work, you know, and what we're right. Okay, if I wanted to displace the incumbent, the first thing to do is to cannibalize their market, particularly if the market is not a growing market and there is nothing else to capture. All that is available is already taken. So my strategy will be, how do I, you know, cannibalize these incumbents? How do I get it into their market? You know, so it requires collaboration. It requires a lot of things. And I have spoken hypothetically because your question too is hypothetical. So, and I'm sure we all understand what we're talking about.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from. Okay, let's move to Dr. Moene, who is going to make quick comments, ask questions, and also do a quick vote of thanks before Dr. Mbah leaves. Then we continue our program. Dr. Mo, go ahead. Are you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, anu kenyi okwute ndị Igbo anyị ekenekwe gị ka isi bịa nọnyere anyị ndị anyị bụ ndị ụzọ ije ndị njepụ na ọgbakọ onyonyo Zoom. Nke a bụ ugboro ịnọ ị na-ekpupụrụ anyị okpu. Ndewo. 2 months ago you visited us in California, Texas, and New York. So this is the 4th time you are engaging the diaspora constituency since you emerged as the PDP gubernatorial candidate. I have said everything I'll say. Your story needs to be told. And I've been telling you this many times. People need to know your story because you are such a powerful role model that have not seen anything like this for quite a time. So we're going to go quite him manu Cambodia, as we say. Ihe a ga-ekwu juru ọnụ mana nke a ga-eme ka aja dị n'anị di mekulu nwa n'azụ ma kwọrọ n'azụ ya bụ anyị ga-ahapụ gị ka ijebe. One thing you left with us is to join hands with you to move Enugu State to a new level of development, having in mind the famous words of JFK, which is ask not what your state can do for you, but what you can do for your state. So ụmụnna m Enugu ma mma anyị sokwe ọjọọ njọ ihe na-abụrụ nke anyị. Ihe na-emegbu anyị nọ n'Amerika maka na ọnọdụ obodo anyị nọ ugbu a abụghị ihe eji anyị isi. Onye ihe na-adị eme abụghị nwa amadi. Sọsọ akala ogori na-efulu efu ka ihe ọma na-asa afọ. Anụ Kenya anyị ekenekwa gị ọzọ for opening the door for us to participate in your mission and vision, which has been successfully presented here today. In popular parlance, we say, happy headed na moto bayana moto. Mana, dịka anyị nọ dịks na West Wokwe in those days, eating without adequate demolition may cause stomach ulcer. So that is why we came here today to listen to you, to tell us how you intend to drive this vehicle. You have accomplished your mission, which is to dispel some ignorance that is out there. And you could offer na ihe amaghị ọmaghị. So kita ịkọ gola anyị and ọ ka nwekwara ọzọ ka akọwa. You have to tell us a whole lot more because na akọ gị onwe ka ọ that eventually I ga-etinye na akwụkwọ mee ka onye ọbụla mara ya na-agụ ya. Biko ka m kene ndị chịkọbara ọgbakọ anụnwa. Ọka eze ji ofu ude igede na egede deje ọka Vitus ọzọ oke Odenigbo na ụmụmba deje ọka amaka ọdụ adeje gamba na agbaja deje Sinachi Ugwu onye Okechukwu adade ọra mma na eziagụ gburugburu nne ndị gị ji mmadụ. Biko ada anyị nwaanyị nne na ude anyị ekenekwa gị. Thank you so much for the introduction and for making this thing as smooth as it could be. Biko ndị na-ebịara ọgbakọ anụnwa ndị niile mere ka ihe niile gasịrị were anyị ekene unu. Dr. Mbah, may your journey be ije awele, ije udo, ije mmiri. Ofe anyị na-agọlụ gị bụ ka site n'eze Chukwuoke abịa maka mmeri bụrụ nke gị. A sị na ejebe akara eze, a na-akwa anaba akara eze. Our expectation is that this is just a beginning. You are a busy man, a very busy man. I don't know how you do it, but you are used to it. You're a businessman. So we expect you to appoint a go-to point person, both during your campaign and eventual government, God willing. This will make it easier for us to engage and participate effectively in moving Enugu State to the next level. As they say in Kolari days, we have been marginalized as a diaspora, to use the trending word, okay? We do have a diaspora office since 2007, but we have not been served very well, not during the Sullivan era and not during this current administration. So our ideas have been lifted and dashed. For the geese that lay golden egg, from Nigeria, Enugu State has been the biggest loser. So, what thing I get take out from this today? So on behalf of all of us, Okute, Deye, Aloha, Ime, Kado, Kenendebe.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Mo. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about debate?
Yes. Dr. Mbah, we get commitment from the other two. Are you committed to
I'm more than happy.
Oh, wonderful.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right, bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Can I continue our discussion, a brief discussion before I end there? From my own take, onye ọbụla anụgo ka esi kwuo ihe ajụla ajụjụ and ọ zara ajụjụ niile. Onye ọbụla ga-ejezi reflect ya. And I can one candidate I na-enye Honorable Uchennaji. So I na-enye nweta ya maybe by next Sunday. And anyị nwere a donation of hall in Enugu State. In short, in Coal City, Enugu. So we are looking at advance to a live debate where we bring the four candidates together and organize a live debate by the diaspora. So this is how we are. So because any comment, any even a kind video the meeting, we are still here.
Yeah, because Professor, one thing, because I need to say something, Prof.
I'm gonna open my recording.
This is to yeah, what we are recording because.
Okay. Check and what recording.
Okay.
Uh-oh,